The other night, I was driving through Princeton, Texas, which, if you don't know, that's like one of the growing suburbs on the north part of DFW. And there were new homes and new developments. It seemed like everywhere we turned, brand new homes, hundreds of them. And then I just kind of started getting interested and just kind of looking and seeing. And most of those homes are priced well under 4 to 500,000. There's a few that kind of jump up above that, but most of them are relatively affordable or super affordable entry points into the market. And so on the one hand, I was like, oh man, this is a really great place to buy if you're looking for something on the affordable side. That's got to be a massive win for a lot of people. But then on the other side of me, there was a second thought, and it was kind of like, well, what happens in 5 to 10 years? Like who's buying here and then? Like, what's the exit plan coming out of this neighborhood or coming out of this city, right? And it kind of led me to this thought of how do we evaluate cities and suburbs and even neighborhoods to the point to where they make sense, to where we decide, hey, is this a good buy for me and my family when it comes to new construction homes? Because here's the truth that I think a lot of people don't talk about. Is you as a buyer and the builder as a company are not playing the same game. A builder is working on a 2 to 5 year window on dirt, right? Like, they're going to buy the dirt, they're going to build it, they're going to sell it out, and then they're going to move on to the next neighborhood, to the next thing that they are working for. That's their job, and they're really good at it. They've been doing it for years and years and years. You, as a buyer, are looking at something totally different. You're planning, hey, we're going to be here for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, whatever it is. Hey, we've got to raise kids here, or we're going to start our family here. And how does that play out? How do we evaluate that in a way that is effective so that we make sure that we get the best deal possible in the right places? I think that's probably the most important thing. So we spent a lot of time talking like, hey, here's how to evaluate a deal and here's how to negotiate with the builder. But I want to kind of give you some insight onto, like, where do we look, right? Because getting a good deal on bad dirt is still at the end of the day a bad deal, right? Like, I want to give you kind of a couple frameworks to evaluate and think about, and then a couple places that you like that as we talk through this criteria that might fit what we're looking for. So one of the only ways I know how to explain this or like understand it in my head is, again, builders and buyers, they're playing two different games. And as a sports guy, like, I can do the sports analogy, right? So like, hockey guy, baseball guy, like, trade deadline happens in every season, right? So like, hey, we're 3/4 of the way through the season. Every team, we get to the point when all the big trades are happening, and they always tend to happen probably right at the same time at the deadline, right? And then you get these teams that, like, they're buyers, or then you get the teams that are sellers, and they're just trying to offload assets as quick as possible. And then there's the play of, like, from the GM standpoint, hey, are we getting a guy that's a rental, right? Like, is he going to show up and he's going to make us better for this just 1 year, and we're going to leverage everything we have to get in and win a championship this 1 year. We don't know if we're going to get to keep them. Or are we getting, like, a long-term asset that is really going to make us tick and be valuable for the future? And they have to weigh that against itself, right? So I think the same is true with builders and buyers. Like, so the builders to me are like the GM that's like, hey, we're just trying to get in and we're trying to win right now. We really don't care what's happening in 5 years. We really don't care what's happening in 10 years. Like, we're doing the thing that makes the most sense for us right at this moment. And it's like, for you guys, you're looking at, hey, where can I go? Like, you're signing like a big long commitment. It's like, hey, what's going to give me the best value for the long term? What's going to fit for my family? And how does that play out into, like, you don't get to just like wave the house in March and be like, yeah, sorry, I have no trade clause, I want to get out, I'm going to go, right? Like, that's not how it works as a buyer. And so a couple things to framework too. So like, as we talk about this, so we went, in my mind, when I talk about suburbs of Dallas, my thought is suburbs is like Plano, Frisco, McKinney, all of those places that are well established and well built out and have the infrastructure in place. The exurb, so like the next out on the ring, is the point where you're finding the land, you're finding the affordability, you're finding, like, it's close, that people are committing to commuting, so to speak. That's kind of what people are playing in this space. They're saying, hey, we're gonna buy dirt in this exurb, like, and commute and move into these spaces because we either A, there's nothing in the suburb that's being built new, or B, we really can't afford to be in that suburb, right? So when we talk about builders and we say, hey, the builders are betting on it, so if they're betting on it, I should probably bet on it, right? Like that's part of that is true, but part of that is also not true. So like going back, for example, so like looking at Princeton, like if I look at all of the homes that are being built right now, all of it is, it's LGI, it's Trophy, it's Lennar, it's Meritage, it's KB, it's all of these more affordable builders kind of coming in and say, hey, we're starting here. What you don't find in Princeton is the Perrys, the Highlands, the Shattuck, those kind of higher tier builders. And I'm not saying that that means Princeton is a bad buy. That just means those builders are betting on like, hey, we're going to do cheap and affordable, and we're waiting on everything else to get here, right? So this is kind of an entitlement on the builder, right? They go in and say, hey, where can we get cheap dirt? The city that says yes to doing all the things that we want to do, and we want to do this massive development with this builder. It's just it's a cost basis decision is all it becomes, right? But even if those higher quality builders or higher tier builders or higher price builders aren't betting on it yet, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad buy. That just means that from a framework standpoint, like they're waiting on the income and the rooftops and everything else to prove itself out first so that they can take their product into that market and know that it fits, right? It just changes the things that we have to understand what we're right about and what we're wrong about. So if we're looking at this, here's probably, I would say, 5 things to actually, super practical things. I would say if we're thinking about where are we looking in DFW, because so many of you are coming into DFW and you're like, hey, we're trying to move here, and we don't know what we don't know. And so what do we look at? Like, what are the 5 actual things that we should actually be looking at? So one of the things I think is super important to talk about is I know I talk a lot about the new construction side, but you as a buyer probably need to be thinking about who is going to buy this house from you at some point, right? At some point, your family is going to grow. You're going to add more kids, or you're going to need more space, or you're going to get a promotion. And so who is buying from you, right? And then even step that back even further. So as we're looking at the start of a neighborhood, who's building here and what tier are they building? So read the mix of builders, not just any one builder. Is everything here all entry level? Is it all move up product? Is it all larger price point? Is it all lower price point? So what is the mix of this city? If you see the builders that are solely focused on turning out volume in units, so Meritage, Trophy, Lennar, KB, LGI, that just tells you like that their dirt was really cheap, and if they were able to get in on the ground floor because that dirt was cheap, and then they can kind of come in and mass produce a market to build out what they want, right? So when you're doing this, look at the active communities in that city. So like you're saying, hey, I want to go to this city. Well, what are the active communities that are being sold there? What are the price points that they're looking at in those neighborhoods? What, like, do we have a neighborhood that's like 300 to 500? Do we have a 400 to 600? Do we have all of these different things? And pull up and look at it as you're evaluating that city or that exurb area that you're wanting to move to. Number 2, and I think this one is very important. We have to understand the difference between a lead indicator and a lag indicator, right? So Costco, HEB, Walmart, Kroger, those are lagging indicators, right? They show up because people are already there. Retail confirms past decisions. So all of the retail spaces that are going in, say, oh yeah, people are here to support this retail, this grocery store. That's indicative of kind of what has already happened, right? Employers, office buildings, campuses, medical systems, universities, big, tech spaces or industry or whatever, they're moving because they know like buyers can, like they can bring their stuff into that market, and then the people they're bringing can afford to pay what they need to pay to get a premium in that neighborhood. So perfect example, Celina. Celina gets a lot of talk online, and Celina can get a lot of hate. It is a fast growing area in the northern part of DFW. But if you look at it, there is not a lot in terms of business and infrastructure, in terms of like the big office campus commercial style things. There is Costco and HEB and Walmart and like mixed use retail projects, but there's no big driving business in that area, which then leads it to being like a heavily commuter city back into somewhere else, right? The distinction tells you one super important thing. Retail says who already lives here. Jobs tell us who's going to continue to keep affording you, right? Because if we get into this, like as we're looking at it, where's the commute taking us? Where are we going, and how far are we going to actually have to commute? And so Celina, for example, is getting itself into a lot of hot water because they had a lot of people that were taking remote jobs, or they were taking tech industry jobs, and now they're having to make those commutes, and they don't want to make those commutes, right? So they're looking at 30, 45, 50-minute drives, and they're like, well, there's nothing here, like we can't, like we're not going to keep commuting, or we don't want to commute, so we're gonna move. And there was no driving basis of jobs in the city of Celina versus looking at a city like Frisco that intentionally drove and said, hey, we're going to get PGA, we're going to get Toyota, we're going to get the Star, we're going to try and develop all of our big commercial stuff, and then let the city kind of develop around that. Which leads me to number 3. One of the questions we should be asking: is there an actual employment basis, or is it just commercial, right? Do we have the hospitals that are driving employment? Do we have a factory? Do we have, is whether we like it or not, do we have the data center? Do we have, like, what do we have that people are being employed to do within the city that they don't necessarily have to commute for? So we talked about Frisco, right? What's the equivalent of that in those ex-urb area, like that's driving people in? Because if it's, you know, city government and it's retail, like that $600,000 to $700,000 house, it's not sustainable unless you have people that are willing to commute. And more, it seems like people either A, recognize that they have to, or B, don't really want to, right? So you also kind of see this show up in your taxable basis. So this is important too, because a city that has no basis funds for its infrastructure and it's solely basing its taxes on like single family rooftops, that's going to be indicative of your tax rate, right? Like you're going to end up paying higher taxes, which then also gets us into the muds and the pits that develop these simple neighborhoods, right? So you've got all of these things that come together that maybe make it to where it's like, oh, well, should we buy in this city, or should we, you know, spend a little more or a little less to go over to this city here? Number 4 thing that I think is important to think through and understand is the pricing ladder, right? Like if you think about pricing in terms of like rungs on a ladder, how many different rungs does that city have? So most of the time, if you're buying as a family, a lot of times we want to be buying in a place where we can live without having to leave, right? I want, you know, for us, it's like, okay, well, we bought here. Well, I don't want to move my kids through 10 different school districts, but at some point we want to upgrade our lifestyle, right? Like you want to upgrade, you want the bigger house, or you want the yard so that you can put the pool in. And how do you do that without, you know, leaving your churches and your community and where your kids play soccer and like different schools? How, like, you have to have those rungs on a ladder, right? So everything all under, let's call it $500,000. That's a 1 rung ladder. And then what happens is the family outgrows that home, and then they leave the city and they go to the next city. And so your normal, regular single family homes exit, and because of the price point, they exit, and it becomes heavily investor focused, right? You end up with lots of rentals, and you end up with rental communities, and then you end up with like a neighborhood turns over because it was cheap to buy those houses, right? So concentration on rentals climbs, and the neighborhood ages downward. So that, like, if you have a city or an area that's focused heavily on affordability, while that may look good on paper, you probably don't, like, you just kind of have to figure that out, because what is the exit plan, or what's the strategy going on the long term, right? The same is true on the opposite end of the ladder. So you get into a place like Prosper, where like you can't enter that market for under in some places 700,000 or 800,000, right? It's the opposite end of that. So there's no entry product. There is no first time home buyers, or if there are, they're very few and far between, or they have some significant help to make that first time home buyer purchase in Prosper to make that happen, right? So your buyer pool then becomes super, super limited on people who are selling and upgrading, and then they have the equity. It's also going to be a market that's going to slower appreciate. So if you're looking at buying in a home or buying in a city, hey, we want to make money on this deal. I think that's why a lot of people do what they do. If you're at that higher tier market, it's going to appreciate at a slower level. It's not like a collapsible risk, maybe. There might be, but it's like a rate sensitivity risk, right? So like in a healthy market or in a healthy city, you want a good, like, hey, we want a good lower, like, entry level to the market. Like, we want people to be able to get in, and then we want a solid mid-tier, you know, those great communities. And then we want like a move up, like, this is a super awesome place to be. And Like we can stay and our family can grow and thrive in the city, in the neighborhoods that we're building in, right? I kind of think about this like, so when I was a kid, I collected Pokemon cards. And in hindsight, if I would have kept all of those cards, I wouldn't have to be selling houses because I probably had stuff that was worth lots of money. But like, that's become a big deal. But the value of the card is not in the card, it's in the running of the print, right? So like 400, so buying in a neighborhood where there's 400 identical spec homes is a massive print of like just copy and paste, right? There's no way to create differentiation or value in that space. So like going back to the card thing, like the value is in the rarity of it. So you want to be buying in a neighborhood that has a little bit of variety. You don't necessarily want all the houses to look all the same throughout the entire space, right? Because at some point you're probably gonna have to resell that home, and you need to have the ability to differentiate in your market of what that house actually looks like and why it's different than the neighbors, right? Your resale competition is the neighbor. It's and then the other hard thing too is like, if you're doing that and you're trying to buy in a neighborhood, so we talk all the time about, hey, if we buy early in a neighborhood, we have the greatest opportunity to get a good deal. That is true. But if you're trying to get in and you're saying, hey, you know what, we want to sell in 12 to 18 months, and we were house number 5 in a 5,000 home community, that's going to be a hard sell because you're going to continue to compete against those builders. It's not even you're competing against your neighbor. You're competing against the builder who's delivering those same floor plans at scale and has the margin to actually undercut you and do rate buy downs and closing costs and things like that. And if you don't understand that, you're going to have a really, really hard time selling. The fifth thing I always want to kind of ask and framework out with people is what is your timeline? What is your goals, right? So 3 to 5 years, hey, we're gonna move here, we're gonna, our kids are gonna finish school and then we're moving out. Hey, we're planning to retire here, we relocate from another state. Where do you want to be? Like, where are you buying infrastructure? And like, where are you betting? And you say, hey, you know what? We're hedging on this to see what this happens. You've got to frame it in the right way of saying, hey, if you're looking at something in a 3 to 5 year plan, how is that different from somebody looking at a 10 to 15 year plan? And I will say, everybody says, oh, this is going to be our forever home. No, it's not. Like, let's just be honest. It's not. You're going to have life changes, and then, you're going to be like us. You're like, hey, you know what? Everything's always for sale. And we just have to figure it out and navigate it. So if I give you all these frameworks, then I would say, okay, let me give you a couple places of where this kind of ladder theory might land, and you can kind of see it working itself out in real time if you're looking, right? So I've like basically the sections of the core. So McKinney would be one of the examples for me that I think does this really, really well. It's got the big employer frameworks, right? Raytheon is there, Globe Life is there, Encore, Independent Financial, Amazon has stuff there. They've got neighborhoods like on the far east side that start in the 300 to 400 range. They have neighborhoods being built close to 75 in the 600 to 900 range. There's Painted Tree that could potentially push toward $1 million. Like, there's so many options in McKinney. Like, to me, that's one of those places where you could say, hey, if I'm evaluating through a lens, that would be like one of the ones I would look at. And if you're looking in northern DFW, that might be one of those places to start, based on good schools, based on prime location, based on the variety of what we see in that market for that area. The next one I would give you, we would go to the opposite side of the map, and I would say the like Hazlet, Northlake, Justin, that northern Fort Worth corridor. There's a lot of growth going in out there. I mean, technically you kind of got Lockheed Martin down to the south. That's a big employer there. Charles Schwab, kind of in that South Lake area. So you're seeing lots of growth. There's the airport, which is the big job pull there. You've got data centers, and then you have this ladder of like growth where the city infrastructure, so like you go out to Justin and it's like, man, there's not a lot going on, but there's some really cool neighborhoods being developed, right? There's you're like, okay, this is kind of a small town feel. And we love all the things going on, but like we can see the potential. And same thing in like Northlake and Hazlet. Like, there's not like a lot in those cities, but the neighborhoods they're building are super cool, and they've got some of the really big like pricing ladders that are moving again, 500 to $1 million plus in those spaces, and it's going to be a growth corridor. So that would be one of those ones that I would say, hey, we bet on, right? Like the top rung, there's some growth there, and then of course I talk about it a lot because I think there's some opportunities down there. Is going south, that 287 corridor, Midlothian, Waxahachie area. There's some big, massive players in the industrial space that are putting their warehouses down there. There's data investment, and whether we like that or not, that's a whole other conversation. And the same thing land wise, like you have good starting point, entry point builders all the way up through, like if you're wanting acreage and you're wanting a little bit of space and you're not wanting to spend $1 million, that is a great place to look for that, right? Like as if we're saying, hey, I want to be a little further away from a neighbor, but I want to be in that like 6 to 7, 800 range. That's definitely doable. Even in a 500 in some spaces, kind of down there, would be one of those options to look at. But all of that goes out the window with what I think actually matters. To be honest, most of us don't get to pick from 40 different suburbs on a map, right? Like we don't, there are very few people that I talk to that actually truly have a full wide open map. They're like, yeah, we can go anywhere in DFW, right? Life kind of narrows it down for us to 2 or 3 places where it's like, hey, based on, okay, my job is putting us here, or, you know, we have family over here. Like, so that framework of thinking through that is important, but we gotta, once life gets in there, that like narrows it down even further, right? Very few people are like, Zach, we think we want to be in McKinney, but we might also want to be in Waxahachie. Like that doesn't, like, it doesn't make sense. Like we're not, so you kind of get self-selected out, right? You know, your kids, or the school you want them in, or the church group you're involved with, or the soccer team, or like any number of reasons can put us in those places where it's like, okay, this constrains us, and in some ways those constraints help us, because okay, we have to be in this area, and you know, then we have to find the best fit for what works for us in those areas. You know, if you've got your kids here and your parents, like if your parents are here in DFW, you know, hey, we want to be close to them because I want my kids to grow up next to their grandparents, because we've had that. Like my daughter is like, my parents are 15 minutes away, and I love it. Just the closeness of having them there. At some point the scores don't matter, right? Like at some point what we see on the numbers, and it's like it all gets outweighed by life and family circumstance, right? So in it, you take that and you say, okay, well, maybe we don't need to look at every single city, but we're looking at one. So we're looking at Rockwall, and now we're looking at Rockwall and say, okay, well, what fits with our life? Do we want, you know, having this conversation with somebody like, hey, we're a young family, we're about to start having kids. We want to find a neighborhood where people are having kids. We don't want to be around older, retired people. We want a vibrant neighborhood with growth, place for our kids to grow up. Okay, well, then we need to look at this neighborhood and not this neighborhood. Or we want to be in this location. To me, it doesn't matter what's important to you. Like whatever it is, it's important to me. And I just, so I can give you all the frameworks and I can give you all the ways to think about this, but ultimately you have to decide what's the most important thing to you. And I want to say this as plainly as I can, because I genuinely believe this is, I want the deal to work. I want to get us the best deal we possibly can. I want to get us as much incentive dollars as we can. I want to get the lot, I want to get the buy now, but I want you to get the house that fits for your family before it fits for the spreadsheet. We can always hedge against a resale risk, right? Like we can always navigate that. We can always figure that out. You can't get those years back with your kids, with your parents 10 minutes away. Right? Like you can't get those Saturday afternoons back where, you know, you were, we went to the grocery store and it was closed, and then we soccer and everything. Like all of those things, like that's the thing that matters is the life that you're building for your family. And I want to be a part of that. Right. So I will tell you, there's no right or wrong way to do this, but there are ways to think about it. You know, hey, don't buy the most expensive home in the neighborhood. Don't buy the least expensive home in the neighborhood. We want to be kind of in the middle. Avoid, you know, maybe the massive cookie cutter community if you can. And I would say sometimes budget just doesn't allow that. Sometimes we have to do what we have to do to get in the space, and I just want to help you work through that. So if you have questions with that, I would be honored to have a conversation with you and just kind of talk through, hey, what is the most important for you and your family as you're looking at new homes here in DFW? Maybe it is price, maybe it is location, maybe it's everything that we can get in the house. Again, whatever it is the most important to you is most important to me. And if we can have a conversation to help you get into your new home here in DFW, would be honored to do that with you. So hopefully this framework kind of helps you think about where we're looking, and affordability is just one piece of the big puzzle we're trying to put together when it comes to buying a new construction home.